Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, you'll meet a best-selling author who says, don't fear setbacks because you can fail your way to success. We'll explain next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, isn't this true? I think we all fear failure, but if you remember when you were learning to walk as a child, you stumbled, and that's how you learned. My next guest is a best-selling author. He's a good friend, Heath Oakes. He's the author of Ignorance on Fire. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Looking forward to it.
Well, we've known each other for several years,
Yep.
and what impresses me most about you is you embrace the idea that struggles and setbacks are good.
Yep.
So talk more about that.
Well, I guess it goes back to where if you're not really very good at a lot, you got to deal with it. Like me, I was the one in high school that coach would go look at like the athletes, and he'd say, only if you had a heart like Oakes, which I remember thinking of that going, do I like that or not, you know? But it was mainly that I wasn't that good, but I tried really hard. The way I looked at that was I would much rather be the one that the thing I can control, which is my try and output, was what they wanted to highlight about me versus my natural ability that I have no really ability to control, right?
And I love the title of your book. We're going to put it up on the screen, Ignorance on Fire, A Journey of Failing Your Way to Success. And I want you, Heath, to talk about how that name, Ignorance on Fire, came to you.
It's one of the best ever. It's one of my very precious mentors, super close to me, was very impactful in my life as a whole. And Elena D.R. Sapri, she was the first female VPS ever hired. They never had a female vice president at this Fortune 500 company I worked for. And her very first hire as the first female VPS was to hire a 23-year-old with like 2 years experience into a role of managing a state. And it was like, that was crazy. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but she did it. I always said she's the only one who have enough kahunas to do so, right? And we ended up killing it. And but at the very first meeting, her first 2 hires, one was me with barely any experience. The other was one with 25 years experience that finally just now was taking that leap. And in that meeting, she was talking to all the state managers, and she said, hey, I need all of you to handle your business over there, okay? Because I've got ignorance on fire and knowledge on ice I got to deal with, so I need y'all to handle what you got. And it was kind of that flashback to that football of like, you know, Oakes, you sure got a lot of heart, right? And I'm sitting there going, ignorance on fire, shit up. My dad called me ignorant a lot as a kid, but I don't think he meant it for the actual definition of ignorant, you know? So I'm going, is that cool? And then I started thinking about it, I was like, you know, I'd rather be ignorance on fire any day. And, you know, ignorance on fire is a way to get yourself in a whole heap of trouble. It's also a way to get yourself through a whole lot of trouble that you never thought you could get through.
And you've been wildly successful in the insurance industry. Why don't you describe your career?
Well, it goes all the way back from door knocking, door to door, 100% commission, get kicked out of neighborhoods in East Texas, building my first agency out there, selling it, building another one, doing a lot of worksite ancillary, employee benefits. Then going corporate at 23, where I was running at the end of it of Texas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma. I probably had 2,000 or so sales agents total under that umbrella. We were doing about $100 million a year in premium. And then 3 years ago, I left and became minority owner into a National Family Care Life Insurance Company and became the CEO about 3 years ago and trying to do a digital transformation. And also have married a 7-year-old and a 1-year-old, so it's a little bit different from when Ignorance on Fire came. You know, Ignorance on Fire came out. I was barely married, and no kids yet and had all the other freaking perspectives can go wildly different after that, as you know.
Yes, and I think I would submit you wrote the book in 2017. It's probably more relevant today than it was when you wrote the book.
I hope so.
And I know you work around a lot of Gen Zs, and I don't want to, typecast the entire generation because there are people who are in that generation who are hard workers. But, the stereotype is we gave them all trophies for showing up, and so they don't have a lot of stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah.
So what are some of the messages in the book?
Well, it's funny because the book was really geared toward the millennials coming up, and what's so funny is that when I was sitting in that moment in my 20s, right, and hearing everybody talking about the millennials coming up, and I remember going, I think y'all are overcomplicating us. We're not. It's just normal. But then I realized that it's basically every generation says the same thing about the next one coming up, and they all have their little bit of quirks of differences. And then it's so funny because the boomers really thought millennials were like really shaking things up. Well, we got nothing on Gen Z. Gen Z's taking it to another level of that. You know what I mean? Like millennials can relate a lot more to boomers, I think, than they even can Gen Z in a lot of ways because it just is. It's funny. It's a very big difference. But when you go back to it, it's some of the basic things that we've known forever, really. No plan B. The life's unfair, and that's okay, And as soon as you accept those things and move on, and my 7-year-old daughter, she doesn't have a whole lot of fear, but one of the things I learned from Sarah it's Blakeman, right, or the Spanx founder, right?
Yes.
She was talking about it and how, so she was selling door-to-door copy machine sales before she did Spanx, but they were like, well, what made you have that confidence? And confidence is another part in the book where I go through on it, which is, she said, my dad would ask me all the time at dinner table, he would say, Sarah, what have you failed at lately? And that was a regular question we knew we had to look for.
Wow.
And she goes, so if we weren't trying things different and failing, he would be mad at us. Wow. She goes, so failing was not even it wasn't an odd, it was just normal. It was like, you better be.
Yes.
And so I stole that, and I bring that up to my daughter all the time. I ask her all the time, what have you failed at lately? And, whatnot. And when she doesn't do, when they got beat in their basketball game, I said, are we okay with losing? She goes, yeah, we're fine. We can move on, but what are you going to do now? I'm going to work harder to not lose next time. There you go.
Wow.
But you're not going to, get beat up, need cuddled in a corner, right? You lost. It's okay. Suck it up. Work harder.
You're a great dad and a very proud husband. In fact, one of the most popular shows that we've ever done on our network is a show that Heath did with his wife, Jenny and Shondo, for many years called Second Shot. We've got a little video that we're going to play here. Tell us about the show. How many episodes did you end up doing? It was a bunch.
Yeah, it was over 150, I believe.
Wow.
And it ended up becoming, being bought by CW and stuff, and they had it on the show, the Second Shots on the show. Now, that also has a lot to do with my wife. That's the great thing about it is that, my wife is beautiful and great at what she does. So
She is.
She helped really kind of drive it in. So I started it actually with Chad and then kind of did it myself for a little bit. And then when she came on, I feel like we really took off because we connected pretty well together on what we were bringing in, I felt like.
Absolutely. And that's something else that you and I have in common. We both married up. So
In a nutshell.
proud to say that. One of my favorite interviews you've ever done is an interview you did with your wife. Let's go ahead and roll that.
Welcome back to Morning Dose, everybody. Okay, if you've ever gone through a major failure in your life, you know how hard it can be to kind of bounce back from that. But what if you knew how to truly use those failures to your advantage? Our next guest is here to teach us how to do that. Heath Oakes is the author of the book Ignorance on Fire, A Journey of Failing Your Way to Success, and host of the motivational podcast Second Shot. He also happens to be my husband. Welcome in, babe.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it. This is fun. I figured you're really going to hand it to me since
I can.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Well, and typically I wouldn't invite a guest in and then say, tell me about all your failures. But I feel okay. I feel like it's important for you to explain some of the things that you've been through in your life for people to understand why you did the book and really why you have a perspective.
Nothing better than being known as the failure guy. That's the best thing ever. But I think failure's perfect with also somebody who's overcoming a lot of obstacles because I don't ever like to look at much as failures, but a lot of people do. So it's more so of overcoming obstacles from educational disabilities growing up, and continue to figure out a way to overcome them. Not being the most likely to succeed, I can promise you that, from as many times I've barely graduated high school, to my first business failure, listening to the wrong people. I was 18, 19 years old. I knew no different. So that's just a couple of the multitude of failures that I tried to overcome over and over.
Well, and I think it's important for people to know that. Okay, we've got a failure of a business. We've got voted, least likely to succeed.
Yeah.
And then you've gone on to do really well in business. So what is it, do you think, that stops people from being able to overcome failure? Because a lot of times when people have that first hit, they just stop.
Well, a lot of it's, like we'll get into with the 5 things that I've really kind of put together that talk about in my book, though, is one of them is people who sitting at people's tables. They're you got people who are sitting there that are putting negativity in people. So it's hard to overcome failure when you're sitting around a bunch of negative people.
Okay.
When you're consistently around that.
Yeah. So let's talk about those top 5. Like thing that you say is to just embrace the failure and own it. What do you mean by that? Well,
that's the biggest thing. Is the first failure that I had, I was like on an uptick of a track of like the kid who did good. Like I had the cool stuff and then I lost it all. And it was like embarrassing. I had to go back and kind of eat my words. And so embracing it and owning it and just saying, you know what, screw it. I don't care what any of you say. I'm going to keep being me and keep moving forward, help me continue to move on in a big way.
So that you don't get stuck in it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the next thing you say, look at who is sitting at your table. You mentioned that. What do you mean by that?
Well, when I talk about it, you look around your kitchen table, who's bringing a fork and who's actually bringing something to eat. Like you got a lot of people, everybody has people sitting around their table, putting stuff in the air, eating all their food, bringing nothing but a fork and bringing no good, nothing positive to the relationship, and you keep letting them come sit at your table. Clear your table out, get the right people at your table that aren't just bringing silverware. You have people bring some food. That way you're not the only one bringing something to the relationship.
I mean, I am the one that cooks every night. But I get what you're saying.
Is favor considered that?
Favor is considered cooking, for the record. Yes, thank you, it is. Okay, so the next one you say is know that you're not the only one.
Everybody likes to believe that people who are successful have something that they didn't have or didn't have to overcome them. A lot of people think that. A lot of people go, oh, well, they didn't have that road. Everybody had the road. Everybody I know successful had a long dirt road, and they had a shovel, and they filled in one pothole at a time until it got easier and easier and easier.
And then building on that, saying the greater the struggle, the greater the reward. That's something I hear you say that all the time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we have to really go through it in order to find success.
I'm a firm believer in our business that I do is a lot of 100% commission sales, and so I see a lot of people that fail and some that make it. The people who have the bigger struggle, the people who have everything fall wrong in every time they take a step, have like the biggest careers of success.
Interesting.
And so I've always thought that it was perfect that it is. I believe you're being tested. How much can you handle? Because when you reap the rewards, we got to make sure you can handle it.
Okay, the last on your big 5 here, make small changes. So explain what you mean, because you're saying, okay, do a lot of these big things, but also make small changes.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a little small changes. A lot of people try to come in and blow up everything they're doing, and you're never going to do that. You're never going to be able to stick with it. Do one little thing, start off listening to positive podcasts and reading a positive book 15 minutes in the morning, and do that for 3 months, and then get rid of the bad people at your table, bring in the good people at your table. Do one little thing at a time, because changing your mindset and where you have to be in order to handle all of those struggles is something that's a 5-10 year journey. It's not a quick fix. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It's not anybody who sells you that is selling you a lie.
Yeah.
Because this struggle is a long-term, consistent changes that'll make it better over time.
Well, thank you, babe.
Thanks for having me.
That was so good. He inspires me. He does. I mean, he does. You've helped me to really sort of reformulate my own morning routine and get into more of a positive mindset. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks, hon.
Okay, so the book is Ignorance on Fire, A Journey of Failing Your Way to Success, if you want to check it out. Thank you so much. You were awesome. You did great. You killed it. Okay, Shane, we'll send it over to you.
And the Second Shot podcast, which I can vouch for. Very good podcast.
Thanks, Shane.
Jenny appears on there every now and then. Hey,
What a great interview. This is what it brought up for me, is that we all want like a blissful life with no adversity. But if you went back into Tom Brady's childhood or Troy Aikman's childhood, and they're playing street football, The story they're saying is we're down by 7.
Yep.
It's 30 seconds to go.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, we've all done it.
Right? So talk about adversity and why we actually need to embrace it.
You know, one of my bigger fears, especially when I started having kids, was that, you know, my kid, I never went without as a kid, but my kids are going to have much more access to a lot of things, like just to be able to buy things easier for them, right? Like, and I'm like, how can I not make an entitled brat kid who, you know, like, is that possible, right? Like, you think about it, you go, oh my God, can you do it in that kind of deal? Well, you can. And I think it's the little things that you got to let your kids overcome themselves, right? My wife and I were talking about it the other day, and you got to get your kids used to adversity. It's like, I believe parenting is more important than ever to set your kids up for failure in little small failures, right? Like, it's like, yeah, if they're about to go jump off of the bridge, you stop your kid, okay? But if he or she's about to step off of that 1-foot embankment you told them not to 5 million times, let them do it, and they're going to face plant. But they're not going to die, okay?
Yes.
But they need to overcome some adversity themselves. I mean, I never would have been to where I am if I didn't have adversity to overcome as a young one anyways. And I think a lot of times people that have more means, they step in and stop, you know, adversity from happening.
Yeah.
And it's to the detriment of your kid. If you don't let your kid forget, when you told them 100 times, you got to take that your project to school. They forget it. You don't go run it up there.
Right.
Let them get a failing grade.
Yeah. It's like a child who wants to touch the oven, and you say, the oven's hot. After you told them 15 times, okay, go find out.
Your turn.
We've got about a minute left, so Heath, talk to the audience about, people who are struggling. They're going through some different things. What words of encouragement can you leave them with?
I would just say, I know it sounds crazy, but some of the pieces of advice that like really has hit me the hardest before is that life isn't fair, and that's okay. You know, life isn't fair, and that's okay, because if life was fair, then everybody would be on the exact same playing field. There'd be no chances for anybody to be distinctively different in any way, shape, or form. And because life isn't fair, the failures you have had have not defined you. They don't have to. If they're defining you now, that's because you're making a choice to let it define you. And you don't have to, because you got to understand, life isn't fair for a lot of people. Yeah, you may have gotten a shorter stick than some of the others, but ultimately there's a lot of people with shorter sticks that have succeeded way past it. So unless you want to still sit around and have the silly old pity me story, or you go, life isn't fair, it's not for a lot of people, and that's okay. And I'm going to go forward through it and figure it out, because the truth is the people who have succeeded have just failed more often than the others. And so if you just haven't failed enough, so keep failing, and you're going to break through. But if you quit, you damn sure ain't going to get it.
Yeah.
Consistency's key.
Heath, you inspire me so much. I love this segment. I could go on for another hour. We're going to end with his LinkedIn page, so you can reach out to him for all your speaking needs or get a hold of his book, The Great Heath Oakes. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Appreciate it. Thank you, brother.
That's it for now.
Yep.
We'll see you
next.
next.
Yes, thank you.